Good evening. My name is Keith Brandt, and I'm the pastor of the Monroe Street Christian Church in Los Angeles, California. It's wonderful to have you with us this evening. This is Wednesday evening, and we're here for our Bible study. We're continuing in the book of Daniel. Now, we're not going to do the book of Daniel maybe exactly like everybody else does it. What we're doing is we're going through a good part of it just to hear it. And we discuss certain aspects, but we're going to come back and go over certain elements to really pick them apart and get a deeper understanding. But until we do that, I want us to just continue to read the story, the narrative, all right? We are beginning after Daniel has given the interpretation to Nebuchadnezzar's dream. And it's a remarkable interpretation. And it was something that no one else could do because only God had the answer. And he gave that information to Daniel. And from what I read, Daniel was very close-knit with Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego. Hananiah, Hananiah? I forget the little one, the middle name. Hananiah, Azariah, and whatever the other name was in Hebrew, who were Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego. They were very close. And when Daniel prayed, he sought their help in prayer. We can more than assume that when we read about that last time. And so forth. And one thing that I noticed was that, for instance, in chapter 2, Daniel is praising God. In chapter 2, verse 23, he says, "I thank you and praise you, O God of my fathers. You have given me wisdom and might, and have now made known to me what we asked you, what we asked of you." Okay? So we're talking about Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego in prayer partnership. There must have been a prayer partnership with them. And also, down in verse 29, Daniel continues to speak to Nebuchadnezzar. He says, "As for you, O king, thoughts came to your mind while on your bed about what would come to pass after this. And he who reveals secrets has made known to you what that will be, or made known to you what will be. But as for me, this secret has not been revealed to me, because I have more wisdom than anyone else, or anyone living. But for our sakes, who make known the interpretation to the king." So Daniel is hearing from the Lord, certainly. But in his association with the other, we'll call them the Jewish believers, their prayer life and their devotion to God, and we know they were devoted because we're getting ready to go into chapter 3, and we'll find out even more. But Daniel is the one that the Lord uses to answer this and give the interpretation of the dream to Nebuchadnezzar. But a lot of times, for instance, I just told you that a friend had just asked for prayer this evening. Never underestimate the power of unified prayer as we all come before the Lord on the different issues that we pray for. Going back to chapter 3, we will continue. Now, you would think, after what Daniel has said to Nebuchadnezzar, now I don't know how much time passes between these two events. I don't think it can be too much time. But anyway, remember how Nebuchadnezzar is so thrilled and he glorifies the Lord, tells about how Daniel's God is superior and all of that? Well, at some point after that, chapter 3 begins, verse 1. Nebuchadnezzar the king made an image of gold, whose height was 60 cubits, and that's about 90 feet. And its width was 6 cubits, and he set it up in the plain of Dura in the province of Babylon. And the king Nebuchadnezzar sent word to gather together the satraps, the administrators, the governors, the counselors, the treasurers, the judges, the magistrates, and all the officials of the provinces to come to the dedication of the image which King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. Now, even though Nebuchadnezzar had glorified the God of Daniel, he still hasn't given up his idea that there are other gods around. And so he has done this. So, verse 3, the satraps, the administrators, the governors, the counselors, the treasurers, the judges, the magistrates, and all the officials of the provinces gathered together for the dedication of the image that Nebuchadnezzar had set up, and they stood before the image that Nebuchadnezzar had set up. Then a herald cried aloud, "To you it is commanded, O peoples, nations, and languages, that at the time you hear the sound of the horn, flute, harp, lyre, and psaltery, in symphony with all kinds of music, you shall fall down and worship the gold image that Nebuchadnezzar has set up. And whosoever does not fall down and worship shall be cast immediately into the midst of a burning, fiery furnace." There are a lot of people who think that they'd like to include Jesus as one of the deities or one of the prophets, in quotes, one of the different or many religious leaders, in quotes, and that they can worship him along with all the others. That is not what the Bible teaches. It was well known in Israel that that couldn't be a part of it, even though they messed up from time to time, big time. But anyway, yeah. Someone who heralds something, declares it forth. Verse 7, so at that time when all the people heard the sound of the horn, flute, harp, lyre, in symphony with all kinds of music, all the people, nations, and languages fell down and worshiped the gold image which King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. I just remember reading this in the original King James and hearing it when I first heard it in the original King James, and I think one of these instruments in the old King James language is called a sackbut. And I missed that from being mentioned here, but we've got a different name for it here. All right? Therefore, at that time, certain Chaldeans came forward and accused the Jews. Well, can you imagine when Daniel and Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego had been appointed over all the other Babylonian astrologers and so-and-sos of authority and power? When Daniel gave the interpretation to the king's dream and all of the approval and status that they were given, don't you think that made some of those people a little jealous? I would think so. Therefore, at that time, certain Chaldeans came forward and accused the Jews. They spoke and said to King Nebuchadnezzar, O king, live forever. You, O king, have made a decree that everyone who hears the sound of the horn, flute, harp, lyre, and psaltery, in symphony with all kinds of music, shall fall down and worship the gold image. And whoever does not fall down and worship shall be cast into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. Then there are certain Jews whom you have set over the affairs of the province of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These men, O king, have not paid due regard to you. They do not serve your gods or worship the gold image which you have set up. One wonders how Nebuchadnezzar could lose his memory of what had happened not too long ago. But he's evidently very high on himself and is outraged when he hears this. Verse 13, then Nebuchadnezzar, in rage and fury, gave the command to bring Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. So they brought these men before the king. And everybody wonders, where was Daniel at this time? I don't know. The Bible doesn't address it, all right? Now, wasn't he almost like second in charge there? Could be he's on an errand in another country on behalf of Babylon. We don't know where he is. He's not hiding out. We know that.
There are verses that said that he was going to be in the court of the king.
Right, right. Well, and being in the court, you'd receive all kinds of important information, and the king might say, I need you to go over to Macedonia and do this or whatever. Anyway, verse 14, Nebuchadnezzar spoke, saying to them, is it true, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you do not serve my gods or worship the gold image which I have set up? Now, if you are ready at the time you hear the sound of the horn, flute, harp, lyre, and psaltery, in symphony with all kinds of music, and you fall down and worship the image which I have made, good. But if you do not worship, you shall be cast immediately into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. And who is the God who will deliver you from my hands? It's quite a challenge, isn't it?
That's a big challenge. Yeah, especially after being bowled over by the interpretation.
Yes. Now, if you turn with me to Isaiah quickly, go backwards, you'll get there.
Which chapter?
Chapter 42, I'm sorry. 43. Now, the book of Isaiah was known to Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego, and Daniel. All right? So we look at chapter 43, verse 2. Well, start at the first verse, 43:1. But now, thus says the Lord who created you, O Jacob, and he who formed you, O Israel, fear not, for I have redeemed you. I've called you by your name, you are mine. When you pass through the waters, I will be with you, and through the rivers, they shall not overflow you. When you walk through the fire, you shall not be burned, nor shall the flames scorch you. Back to Daniel. Verse 16, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to the king, O Nebuchadnezzar, we have no need to answer you in this matter. If that is the case, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace. And he will deliver us from your hand, O king. But if not, and I think when they say that, they must be thinking God may have a different plan. He says, but if not, let it be known to you, O king, that we do not serve your gods, nor will we worship the gold image which you have set up. Then Nebuchadnezzar was full of fury, and the expression on his face changed toward Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. You know, I think he had trusted them for quite a while now and was very comfortable in all the work they were doing for him, and this is just blowing his mind.
He had already refused to eat his food.
Yeah, right. He spoke and commanded that they heat the furnace 7 times more. than it was usually heated. I think the original King James says 7 times hotter. And he commanded certain mighty men of valor who were in his army to bind Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and cast them into the burning fiery furnace. Whoa. Then these men, and we're talking about the Hebrews, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, were bound in their coats, their trousers, their turbans, and their other garments, and were cast into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. Therefore, because the king's command was, it says here urgent, but the word is really harsh. Yes.
This fiery furnace, like a great cauldron or something, where is it? You know, what is it for?
He had it built in case somebody...
Oh, he had it built for that purpose?
Well, I think so. I can't imagine them. Well, let me say this.
You know, castles can be cold.
Let me say this. That in building the image, I'm assuming it's outside, but it might be inside a building. And if so, if it was for pagan worship and such, they might have had a furnace there that they used just to keep the place comfortable. But I don't know that, all right?
Any other ritualistic...
Yeah, right.
Yes.
Therefore, because the king's command was urgent, and the furnace exceedingly hot, the flame of the fire killed those men who took up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And these 3 men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, fell down, bound into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. Then King Nebuchadnezzar was astonished. And he rose in haste and spoke, saying to his counselors, his officials, "Did we not cast 3 men bound into the midst of the fire?" They answered and said to the king, "True, O king." "Look," he answered, "I see 4 men loose, walking in the midst of the fire, and they are not hurt. And the form of the 4th is like the Son of God." And literally in the Hebrew there, I think it really says a son of the gods. Okay? Then Nebuchadnezzar went near the mouth of the burning fiery furnace and spoke, saying, "Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, servants of the Most High God, come out and come here." Then Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came from the midst of the fire. This has to be such an enormous thing for all the people that are watching as well. It's already been vile that the men that put them in the furnace, I won't say they were roasted alive, but the heat killed them. So it's been quite an amazing scene. Yes, right, yes.
How is it that Nebuchadnezzar could turn on a dime after he was so astonished by the
it's amazing.
Interpretation of his dream and say, "This is the all-powerful God here," you know, and then he does this?
Well, because he's convinced himself, like many people try to do, that he can rationalize his sinful behavior.
I feel also, Pastor, because as we go through the book, we see every time that Nebuchadnezzar sees God act, he falls for God. And he is for God.
Yeah.
But when he goes against God is when his court, his people are telling him, "Hey, these Jews are doing bad things. We should go against them." And then he remembers, "Oh yeah, that's right. I do like other gods too. Yeah, we should. I did say that." It's like when he made that decree that people should die, and then that's when he had to throw Daniel into the lions. Then he wasn't happy about that. He didn't want to do it.
It's
That wasn't
reasonable
that wasn't Nebuchadnezzar putting Daniel in the lion's den. That was Darius did that.
reasonable that he was persuaded by.
But we're going to get into some of this.
Yes.
Okay?
They had an agenda.
Then Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came out of the midst of the fire, and the satraps, the administrators, governors, king's counselors gathered together, and they saw these men on whose bodies the fire had no power. The hair of their head was not singed, nor were their garments affected, and the smell of fire was not on them. It is so amazing. Nebuchadnezzar spoke. Duh. Saying, "Blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who sent his angel and delivered his servants who trusted in him. And they have frustrated the king's word and yielded their bodies, that they should not serve nor worship any god except their own God. Therefore I make a decree that any people, nation, or language which speaks anything amiss against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego shall be cut in pieces, and their houses shall be made an ash heap, because there is no other God who can deliver like this." Then the king promoted Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the province of Babylon. Now, as wonderful as this is in his reaction, he still has not given everything to the Lord. Yeah. Chapter 4. Nebuchadnezzar the king, to all peoples, nations, and languages that dwell in all the earth, peace be multiplied to you. I thought it good to declare the signs and wonders that the Most High God has worked for me. How great are his signs and how mighty his wonders. His kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, that means eternal, and his dominion is from generation to generation. So we do see a strengthening of Nebuchadnezzar's faith, okay?
How does he think it's going to be everlasting?
Because he's probably been studying more about him. He's got Daniel, Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego to ask questions of, doesn't he?
And also, we assume that he's pretty well educated, and also his father was a great warrior from before, right?
Yeah, but he wasn't a godly man.
Right.
Right, yeah. Now he says in verse 4, I, Nebuchadnezzar, was at rest in my house, and flourishing in my palace. I saw a dream which made me afraid, and the thoughts on my bed and my visions, the visions of my head troubled me. Now, he says to all the peoples and nations and languages. Perhaps he is assuming that what he's going to reveal to us is something that is actually something pleasant, and when he finds out, it'll be wonderful.
He's in charge of a huge reign.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah.
Countries and languages.
Yes. Therefore, I issued a decree to bring in all the wise men from Babylon before me, that they might make known to me the interpretation of the dream. Then the magicians, the astrologers, the Chaldeans, and the soothsayers came in, and I told them the dream, but they did not make known to me its interpretation. But at last, Daniel came before me. His name is Belteshazzar, according to the name of my God. In him is the spirit of the holy God. All right. And I told the dream before him, saying, Belteshazzar, chief of the magicians, because I know that the spirit of the holy God is in you, and no secret troubles you. In other words, you can understand anything. Explain to me the visions of my dream that I have seen and its interpretation. These were the visions of my head while on my bed. I was looking, and behold, a tree in the midst of the earth, and its height was great. The tree grew and became strong. Its height reached to the heavens, and it could be seen to the ends of all the earth. Its leaves were lovely, its fruit abundant, and in it was food for all. The beasts of the field found shade under it. The birds of the heavens dwelt in its branches, and all flesh was fed from it. I saw in the visions of my head while on my bed, and there was a watcher, a holy one, coming down from heaven. He cried aloud and said thus, "Chop down the tree, cut off its branches, strip off its leaves, scatter its fruit. Let the beasts get out from under it, and the birds from its branches. Nevertheless, leave the stump and the roots in the earth, bound with a band of iron and bronze, in the tender grass of the field. Let it be wet with dew of heaven, and let him graze with the beasts on the grass of the earth, and let his heart be changed from that of a man. Let him be given the heart of a beast, and let 7 times pass over him." The decision is by the decree of the watchers, and the sentence by the word of the holy ones, in order that the living may know that the Most High rules in the kingdom of men, gives it to whomever he will, and sets it over the lowest of men. This dream I, Nebuchadnezzar, have seen. Now you, Belteshazzar, that's Daniel, declare its interpretation, since all the wise men of my kingdom are not able to make it known to me, to make known the interpretation, but you are able, for the Spirit of the Holy God is in you. Now, if I were Daniel, I'd sort of be shaking in my boots or my sandals. Then Daniel, whose name was Belteshazzar, was astonished for a time, and his thoughts troubled him. Yes, I guess so. So the king spoke and said, "Belteshazzar, do not let the dream or its interpretation trouble you." Belteshazzar answered and said, "My lord, may the dream concern those who hate you, and its interpretation concern your enemies. The tree that you saw, which grew and became strong, whose height reached to the heavens, and which could be seen by all the earth, whose leaves were lovely and its fruit abundant, in which was food for all, under which the beasts of the field dwelt, and in whose branches the birds of the heaven had their home. It is you, O king, who have grown and become strong. For your greatness has grown and reaches to the heavens, and your dominion to the end of the earth. And inasmuch as the king saw a watcher, a holy one, coming down from heaven and saying, 'Chop down the tree and destroy it, but leave its stump and roots in the earth, bound with a band of iron and bronze in the tender grass of the field. Let it be wet with the dew of heaven, and let him graze with the beasts of the field till 7 times have passed over." Most understand times here to be years. Okay? "This is the interpretation, O king, and this is the decree of the Most High, which has come upon my lord the king. They shall drive you from men. Your dwelling shall be with the beasts of the field, and they shall make you eat grass like oxen. Then they shall wet you with the dew of heaven, and 7 times shall pass over you, till you know that the Most High rules in the kingdom of men, and gives it to whomever he chooses, and as inasmuch as they gave the command to leave the stump and roots of the tree, your kingdom shall be assured to you after you come to know that heaven rules. Therefore, O king, let my advice be acceptable to you. Break off your sins by being righteous, and your iniquities by showing mercy to the poor. Perhaps there may be a lengthening of your prosperity. Whoa. Oh, yeah.
Kind of situation, and if the king were to give himself to God, this wouldn't happen? Or is this one of the things of like, it's going to happen and you have to learn, like this will be a trial and tribulation?
Well, we don't have a biblical record of his immediate reaction. I personally think that if he had immediately fallen on his face and humbled himself before God, that God might have changed in some way what was necessary. But you see, God is being merciful in doing this to Nebuchadnezzar, because he believes that in doing this, Nebuchadnezzar will come to follow him. Verse 28, all this came upon King Nebuchadnezzar. So I don't know how much time it was, but I don't think it's very much, because he all of a sudden gets to be wacky and intolerable to be around men. All this came upon King Nebuchadnezzar, and at the end of the 12 months, he was walking about the royal palace of Babylon. The king spoke, saying, is not this great Babylon? Well, we have 12 months now, don't we? So he hasn't yet been affected yet. There's 12 months here. Well, so it's been a year. The Lord has been patient. Is not this great Babylon that I have built for a royal dwelling by my mighty power and for the honor of my majesty? While the word was still in the king's mouth, a voice fell from heaven. King Nebuchadnezzar, to you it is spoken, the kingdom has departed from you. And they shall drive you from men, and your dwelling shall be with the beasts of the field, and they shall make you eat grass like oxen. And 7 times shall pass over you until you know that the Most High rules in the kingdom of men and gives it to whomever he chooses. That very hour the word was fulfilled concerning Nebuchadnezzar. He was driven from men and ate grass like oxen. His body was wet with the dew of heaven till his hair had grown like eagle's feathers and his nails like birds' claws. This is something for 7 years. I don't know what the reaction of the kingdom and the king's throne, except we find out that it is most probably his son or grandson that took his place for those 7 years. We'll see that as we go on here. And at the end of the time, I, Nebuchadnezzar, lifted my eyes to heaven, and my understanding returned to me. And I blessed the Most High and praised and honored him who lives forever. Now, let me just say this. It may be that I have misunderstood this a little bit, to the degree that the beginning of this whole section, he's telling it to us after the fact. Okay? And at the end of the time, I, Nebuchadnezzar, lifted up my eyes to heaven, and my understanding returned to me. And I blessed the Most High and praised and honored him who lives forever. For his dominion is an everlasting dominion, and his kingdom is from generation to generation. And all the inhabitants of the earth are reputed as nothing. He does according to his will in all the army of heaven. And among the inhabitants of the earth, no one can restrain his hand or say to him, "What have you done?" At the same time, my reason returned to me, and for the glory of my kingdom, my honor and splendor returned to me. My counselors and nobles resorted to me, and I was restored to my kingdom, and excellent majesty was added to me. Now, I, Nebuchadnezzar, praise and extol and honor the King of heaven, all of whose works are truth, and his ways justice. And those who walk in pride, he is able to put down. So that is the last we hear of Nebuchadnezzar. And personally, I believe he's in heaven. I believe that his faith became very, very real and very consistent. From the commentary, just a little bit here. The degree, to which Nebuchadnezzar had personal ongoing relationship with Yahweh is not clear here. The emphasis is on his recognizing God's kingship rather than his own authority. His restoration is designed to show God's ideal for all rulers, surrendering their kingship to God's ultimate rule. Chapter 5. Belshazzar the king made a great feast for 1,000 of his lords and drank wine in the presence of the 1,000. Now back to the commentary. Remember, Daniel's name was Belteshazzar. The king's son or grandson here is Belshazzar, whose name means Bel protect the king, was the eldest son of the last Babylonian king, Nabonidus. He assumed his father's kingly functions during Nabonidus' 10-year absence from Babylon. I'm going to have to look that up a little more to find out how the succession is passed here to the throne.
Why would he be gone for 10 years?
Because Nebuchadnezzar is never mentioned again after this. And I understood that Belshazzar was Nebuchadnezzar's son or grandson. Now it might be that, as it is in some of the Hebrew genealogies, that sometimes grandsons are called the son of so-and-so. And I understand in the Hebrew, if it doesn't have the literal word beget or begot, and they say son of, may mean grandson or son. It could be that that's the way this is viewed, since we're getting it in the Hebrew language into the English. But also, it may be how that was viewed, that type of understanding, by other royal families. I just don't know. I'll look it up so I have something more for you on it next time.
I wonder if primogeniture was universal.
Yeah. Belshazzar the king made a great feast for 1,000 of his lords and drank wine in the presence of the 1,000. While he tasted the wine, Belshazzar gave a command to bring the gold and silver vessels, which his father, Nebuchadnezzar, but that word father there is ancestor. The word is equally good for ancestor. So he's either grandson or son, okay? Which his father Nebuchadnezzar had taken from the temple which had been in Jerusalem, that the king and his lords, his wives and concubines might drink from them. Can you imagine this? Then they brought, well, you understand that that was what they did when they would conquer a nation. They would take everything that represented the gods of that nation and bring it and throw it down before the gods they worshiped. It was one of the most hurtful things they could do to the people of a nation, to degrade their God by taking his possessions, which were represented by the vessels from the temple, and throw them down before the gods that they worshiped. So bringing these vessels out of where they'd been kept now for almost 70 years. Well, during the 70-year period, let me put it that way, because I don't know exactly which of the three sections that brought the captives to Babylon, the temple belongings was taken to Babylon. I have to check that out again. But they brought the gold vessels that had been taken from the temple and the house of God, which had been in Jerusalem, and the king and his lords and wives and concubines drank from them. They drank wine and praised the gods of gold and silver, bronze and iron, wood and stone. In the same hour, the fingers of a man's hand appeared and wrote opposite the lampstand on the plaster of the wall of the king's palace. And the king saw the part of the hand that wrote. Then the king's countenance changed. Do you think so? And his thoughts troubled him, so that the joints of his hips were loosened and his knees knocked against each other. He's scared.
Am I understanding that correctly? They just saw a hand with no body?
Yes.
Okay.
He saw a literal hand writing.
Yeah, I'd be pretty scared too.
The king cried aloud to bring in the astrologers, the Chaldeans, and the soothsayers. The king spoke, saying to the wise men of Babylon, "Whoever reads this writing and tells me its interpretation shall be clothed with purple and have a chain of gold around his neck, and he shall be the third ruler in the kingdom." Now all the king's wise men came, but they could not read the writing or make known to the king its interpretation. Then King Belshazzar was greatly troubled. His countenance was changed, and his lords were astonished. The queen, because of the words of the king and his lords, came to the banquet hall. The queen spoke, saying, "O king, live forever. Do not let your thoughts trouble you, nor let your countenance change. There is a man in your kingdom in whom is the spirit of the holy God. And in the days of your father, light and understanding and wisdom, like the wisdom of the gods, were found in him. And King Nebuchadnezzar, your father the king, made him chief of the magicians, astrologers, Chaldeans, and soothsayers. Inasmuch as an excellent spirit, knowledge, understanding, interpreting dreams, solving riddles, and explaining enigmas were found in this Daniel, whom the king named Belteshazzar. Now let Daniel be called, and he will give the interpretation." Whoa. She doesn't say he might. She says he will.
How much time has passed?
We wonder a little bit about her faith, what it was like. And when it says queen, I guess we assume that it's Belshazzar's wife, could be his mother. Well, I'm just saying that she might be old enough to remember Daniel, and all. Then Daniel was brought in before the king. The king spoke and said to Daniel, "Are you that Daniel, who is one of the captives from Judah, whom my father the king brought from Judah? I've heard of you, that the Spirit of God is in you, and that light and understanding and excellent wisdom are found in you. Now, the wise men, the astrologers, have been brought in before me that they should read this writing and make known to me its interpretation, but they could not give the interpretation of the thing. And I have heard of you that you can give interpretations and explain enigmas. Now, if you can read the writing and make known to me its interpretation, you shall be clothed with purple and have a chain of gold around your neck, and shall be the third ruler in the kingdom. Then Daniel answered and said before the king, let your gifts be for yourself, and give your rewards to another. Yet I will read the writing to the king, make known to him the interpretation. O king, the Most High God gave Nebuchadnezzar your father a kingdom and majesty, glory and honor. And because of the majesty that he gave him, all peoples, nations, and languages trembled and feared before him. Whomever he wished, he executed. Whomever he wished, he kept alive. Whomever he wished, he set up, and whomever he wished, he put down. But when his heart was lifted up and his spirit was hardened in pride, he was deposed from his kingly throne, and they took his glory from him. Then he was driven from the sons of men. His heart was made like the beasts, and his dwelling was with the wild donkeys. And they fed him with grass like oxen, and his body was wet with the dew of heaven, till he knew that the Most High God rules in the kingdom of men and appoints over it whomever he chooses. But you, his son Belshazzar, have not humbled your heart, although you knew all this. And you have lifted yourself up against the Lord of heaven. They have brought the vessels of his house before you, and you and your lords, your wives, and your concubines have drunk wine from them. And you have praised the gods of silver and gold, bronze and iron, wood and stone, which do not see or hear or know. And the God who holds your breath in his hand and owns all your ways, you have not glorified. Then the fingers of the hand were sent from him, and this writing was written. And this is the inscription that was written: Mene, Mene, Tekel Upharsin. This is the interpretation of each word. Mene, God has numbered your kingdom and finished it. Tekel, you have been weighed in the balances and found wanting. Perilous, your kingdom has been divided and given to the Medes and the Persians. Then Belshazzar gave the command, and they clothed Daniel with purple, put a chain of gold around his neck, and made a proclamation concerning him that he should be the third ruler in the kingdom.
Pastor,
Yes.
so it throws me off because he basically told him you're done.
Yeah.
And he there's no mention of any retaliation. I mean, it could be because he knows what happened to Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego. But he just clothed him. He told him, this is the end of your ruling.
Well, this is the interpretation.
Yeah.
I didn't say it was going to be good.
And he just like, all right, well, here's, I'm going to give you, you're the third ruler in command.
Well,
and the gold.
I think that the king has done his very best to steel himself against the texture of what he has just heard. No, I think he's pretending that that never happened. I think he's just saying, that's too horrible even to think that it might even be true. But he's given the answer, and we'll set him up. Well, go ahead.
When you see a hand Right. You're going to be frightened by
Yeah.
all of this anyway.
Oh, yeah.
And so Daniel has a track record, and so.
Well, he may have thought that he was pleasing God by decorating Daniel and promoting him, that maybe that would please God.
Maybe that could please the God.
Yeah, something like that, whatever.
It's just so funny to see how people want to interpret things their way when it's like
Oh, yeah,
clearly written on the wall.
right.
It's the Lord writing. Is that correct?
Well, he's the one that wrote it.
Yes.
Or let me say this. I'll just leave it at that. Verse 30, that very night, Belshazzar, the king of the Chaldeans, was slain, and Darius the Mede received the kingdom about 62 years old. And it pleased Darius to set over the kingdom 120 satraps, to be over the whole kingdom, and over these 300 governors, of whom Daniel was one, that the satraps might give account to them, so that the king would suffer no loss. We will begin there next week. So, it's hard to understand why Belshazzar didn't fall down on his face crying out before God, "Oh God, save me," or something like that. But you know, some people can be so far gone. The Bible says that God will not always strive with man. And I don't know that that's just mankind in general, but if it means people can just go too far till they've cut themselves off. It isn't that God wants them that way, but they've gotten beyond the point of no return.
It was curtains. And
Yeah.
No, really.
No, you're right.
He just was told the Medes and the Persians have taken all of the kingdom anyway. And obviously they invaded the palace or whatever and killed him.
Yeah, it's
Well, Darius, you know, worked hand in hand with Cyrus the Great. And some believe that Darius was like his chief person to put forward in different situations, and that Darius himself was a great leader. And the two of them worked together. And we understand that this is one of the kingdoms of the Medes and the Persians, that are part of that first dream that Daniel interpreted for Nebuchadnezzar. And next week, we're going to go over that. And then we'll eventually get back to 6, but I want us to go over the imagery and everything from the first dream, because it's very important for what we're going through now even. Yes.
During, I was going to ask you that question, but I Googled it, if that's correct. During the time of Darius and Mede, Daniel was 70 to 80.
Yeah, I was wondering about that.
He was around
Yeah, because
70.
it'd be 50 years of a generation,
That's correct.
you know, and he was 14 at the time.
I
so-
correct.
think Daniel came, maybe you'll remember better than I do. If Daniel came over in the first group or if he came in the second group. We do know that when he got there, he was 13 or 14. And the total time they're going to be in Babylon is 70 years. Now, they're going to be there a little while longer. They don't just go next year, back to Israel. So we'll try to figure out that a little bit. I don't know. Daniel was probably in his 80s. And we don't have a record that Daniel went back to Israel that I know of yet. I don't think I'm missing that. I've never known that there's a record of him going. So whether he just stayed there or if he died in the process, could have. And so we'll look at that next week. Well, let's go into a time of prayer. Are we saying good night now?
Yeah.
All right. Folks, bless you. We'll come back to this next week.